Welcome, welcome. Glad to see you back. Welcome. We'll give people a couple minutes to join us, and then we're going to get started with Financial Foundations to Entrepreneurial Peace. Hey, Connor, welcome back. As I was saying, we're going to give people a couple minutes to join us. I just logged in. Sure, my computer's plugged in. Welcome, welcome. We'll give people another minute to join us. Had some notes from people they were going to pop in live today. So that will be good. And I know many are watching on the replay, so that's exciting too. Hey, Sean, welcome. Hi, Poo-Poos. Hi. We'll give people another minute or two, and then we'll get started. Hope everybody's having a good day. You're in the right place for Financial Foundations to Entrepreneurial Peace. I've got my doggie here. She's being a big baby as she recuperates from a surgery. Hey, sweetie. Non-stop pats is what she's looking for. So. All right, so let's get started to make the most of everyone's time who is here. And I know people catching the replay as well. So welcome. You're absolutely in the right place for Financial Foundations. Somebody else said. Perfect. Hey, Kimberly, welcome. Nice to see you here. Hey, Judy. So we're just getting started, and people will trickle in as they do. So welcome. So I was just starting to say you are absolutely in the right place for Financial Foundation to Entrepreneurial Peace training, where this whole week we're going to learn the keys to financial basics and money mastery. And so it's really my privilege to be able to provide this training and support you with what you need. So I'm really happy that you're here, and more importantly, very excited that you're taking control of this part of your business life, and that it's something that you've decided to kind of really step into, which is fantastic. Because I know the trajectory of your business changes, and everything else seems to change when you get a handle on this part of your business, which is fantastic. And this week is all about you. So I want to hear from you. I want to know what questions you have. I want to know what you need. Want to know what's been perhaps plaguing you in the past, what has always been kind of a struggle, so that I can help you most appropriately. So if you haven't had a chance to grab your workbook for the week, Sean has kindly dropped the link in the chat for you, so you can grab your workbook. And as I was saying, I really do want to support you and make sure the training is getting at what you need and to help you with your particular goals and what you want to accomplish. So would really love to have a short chat with you, and the link is there as well in the chat for us to have a quick conversation. So we can do it a little bit more informally, not necessarily in front of everybody. I welcome your questions here as well, but would love to hop on the phone to have that time for us to talk one-on-one. So that link is there too, which is perfect. By way of background, my name is Tracy Bissett. My career has been predominantly focused in financial services and working with business owners of all different sizes to help them get the access to financing that they needed. So I worked for probably half my career when I was at TD Bank on the client side, structuring loans, analyzing deals across all different industries, and helping those entrepreneurs directly. And then I went on the other side of the transaction, and I was approving loans for companies of all different sizes. And so that was really fun for me. I found I missed dealing with the clients. And so when I started my own business, I wanted to get back to working one-on-one with clients, because for me, that's where the fun is. And for me, it's not at the big corporate deals, it's more on the small business side. And so generally I work with entrepreneurs and business owners where sales are anywhere up to 2 million. After that, I find that they generally have a financial professional on board who's supporting them, whether a fractional CFO or someone else. And so that's my sweet spot where I like to play. I like it because I know that when things are learned and when impacts are made, it impacts not only just your business, but usually your family, affects your whole life. And so we talked a little bit yesterday about this concept of entrepreneurial peace and what does that mean and how would that look and feel. So for those who are joining us first time today, and even for those who were here yesterday, think about that again. What would entrepreneurial peace look like for my business and for my family and me? Specifically, if I was in control of my financial results and cash flow, what would that look like? What would that feel like? And what would it allow me to do? Could I do some things different if I had that kind of comfort and that kind of peace? So that's the goal. That's why we're here. So love for you to drop in the chat where you're joining us from, as well as what kind of business you have. And you can feel free to unmute if you would prefer, or you can drop it in the chat just so we have a sense of who's in the room. So thanks for that note I just got here. That's perfect. Mountain's Note Taker, I'm not sure if you are here on behalf of Alexis or you are Alexis, so welcome. We're glad that you're here, which is great. And as a reminder, if you haven't got your workbook, as I mentioned, the link is there in the chat. It looks like this. We're using the same workbook all week, okay? So that we're gonna move through. You would have seen, in case you're not getting my emails, I've been sending some personally, and then there are some that are going out on an automated basis. Every day around 4:30 Eastern, you should get the recap from the day that has just occurred. There will be the link to the YouTube video. There are also the pages from the workbook. So if you don't happen to have your workbook filled in and you're looking for the notes, that comes out every day around 4:30 Eastern. Thanks, Kimberly. Haircuts on Wheels. Excited to address something that's been on my list to do for 11 years. Awesome. Congratulations for bringing yourself here today, for signing up. And I think you probably saw it on one of my social posts yesterday and took the leap. So that's great. And so you've made the hardest move right now by coming here, and everything else gets easier. So that's wonderful. Excellent. And I know Judy's in Halifax, Angela, Arkansas, is that right? Yeah, okay, perfect. And Connor's going to remind me about Alexis, where they are based. So if we know. So I want you to get into your workbook. We're going to jump all the way over to page 5. So Cash Flow Forecasting 101. If you don't have your workbook downloaded or printed, you're going to grab the link from the chat and be able to go through there. And so today we're really getting into how do we do this cash flow forecasting. We're not necessarily focused on yesterday, where we were thinking about that difference between profit and cash flow. And I talked about it, the way that we might think about it is we're going to trace one of our customers. And when we start doing business with them, we're going to trace going through where does that cash come in. So we can be highly profitable on paper, but if we don't get paid for a while, our business can go under in as quick as 90 days. And I was sharing yesterday that during my time at TD, during the financial crisis, certainly we saw lots of those kinds of situations. And if you're dealing with corporates who do pay over an extended time, or for whatever reason, someone's paying you in a delayed fashion, not having that cash impairs your ability to then be able to pay your bills and keep things moving. As well, growth is very, very hungry, and growth eats cash. So if you're building up a bigger team, you're building up inventory, if you are investing in some other projects, all of that growth takes cash to do that. And there can be this tightness and this pressure. So sometimes people think if I'm doing really well, then they will be able to just not worry about that. But that is something that's going to be a challenge. So. Sorry, I just had to give my puppy a little warning because she's licking her incision from her surgery. So for those who were here right at the beginning, I'm trying to keep an eye on her as we go through. So we're on page 5 in your workbook, Cash Flow Forecasting 101. And so let's get into what does this mean? And so to give you a refresher on the workbook, I'm going to go through, I'm going to talk it through and then give you some examples and give you some stories, but we're going to fill in the blanks. So cash flow forecasting is a projection of what you expect your inflows and outflows to look like and the timing that they're going to happen. So money comes into your account, money goes out, and that timing that it happens is the part that we need to manage. and the part that is harder to juggle often. Okay. And so think about your business. Think about, I know Angela's getting hers up and running. What do you think that's going to look like? When are these timing differences going to happen? What's going to be the impact of that? So money comes in, money goes out, the timing that happens. So we're going to get into the 5 steps to cash flow clarity. And it's just a fancy way of saying, what's the thought process and the logic we're going to use to actually make a cash flow forecast? And so depending on where you are in your business, you might do it on paper. You might do it in Excel. I know in a lot of the accounting softwares, there are cash flow projection tools. I don't know any that work very well. So I'm still an advocate of using Excel and doing kind of the basics, like make a list of your inflows for the month, make a list of your outflows. Okay. So we don't need to be fancy. And sometimes I find that entrepreneurs feel like we need to use sophisticated tools and make it complex. We want to get to the basics. So let's just start there. So when we're starting our cash flow forecast, the first thing we're going to do, step number 1, it all starts here. We're going to get the initial balance. So let's pretend we're doing a cash flow forecast for June. We're going to cheat a little bit. We already know that half of June is over, but we're still going to do it for June. To get our initial balance, we're going to go back and look at our bank statement or our account balance for that very first day, last day of May, first day of June. Where were we starting? So we're starting with that initial balance. Now, cash flow forecasting is looking into the future. The farther we get away from today, the harder it is to know exactly how many sales we're going to have, exactly what kinds of projects, what that's going to be, but we do need to make our best estimates. So step number 2 is show me the money, estimate the inflows. So we want to think about the things that we know to be true. Who do we maybe have projects on the go with right now? Who do we maybe have recurring work with? We know that this money is guaranteed. We've already made the sale. It's just a matter of the month going by and we get the cash in. So who do we know like that, that's in it related and working with our business? What might be possible? Have we been talking to some people and we might start some work with them by the end of the month? Maybe we're going to get in a deposit. Maybe we're going to get in their first payment. What's possible there? And then are there things that could happen that we don't expect that might impact that amount of cash that makes it to our bank account? Is one of our customers sometimes a little bit late? So while we might be counting on those funds, sometimes they're a little bit late. So we want to give ourselves a little bit of flex there on those inflows. So taking into account everything that you know, everything that you're able to see, everything that you know that's going on in the economy, going on with COVID, impacting your business. And so how does that look? So that's our inflows. And that is generally going to be the most challenging part that we're going to do. Now, I talked about monthly and said that we're doing this. Let's pretend we're doing it for June. If you have really tight cash flow, monthly is kind of the standard that we would do it, the biggest frequency. We wouldn't go and start doing it quarterly. Monthly is going to be the standard. If we've got tight cash flow, though, we might have to do it weekly because we need more clarity on exactly when are those funds coming out. And if we have really tight cash flow, we might need to do it on a daily basis. And I've worked with clients who've needed to do all of those. And different situations dictate different things. And there could actually be different times in your business where you go from monthly down to weekly to maybe daily, back up to monthly, and it really depends. So if the cash flow is super tight, you need to be able to look at that and to manage that. Okay, so you choosing the frequency that's appropriate for you is important. Okay, and the one that's going to give you the most information. I don't recommend doing daily or weekly unless you need to, because the cash flow is so tight, because it actually creates a lot more work for you when you're doing that cash flow forecast. Because now not only do you need to know money's coming in that month, you need to know really what day. And then it gets even more precise. When we're thinking about the money going out, we've got to know the exact date of all of those expenses and when that money is going to flow out. So it creates more of a complicated puzzle. It's very doable, but you don't need to put yourself through that extra rigor if that's not the case in your business. So step number 3, as we move on, is I've got bills, and it's estimate the outflows. And so that's a lot easier to do because a lot of our expenses recur. We pay our insurance every month. We pay all those subscriptions that we use. If we have payroll, we generally know how much we're going to pay people. There might be some level of payroll that's tied to sales, and so we might need to adjust that. Just like if we're working on a project and we're physically doing something and we're paying for materials, we might need to adjust based on that. And we could figure out kind of our percentage. The goal is to approximate. We're trying to see with a cash flow forecast, are we going to have some problems in the future? That's the whole purpose of it. And to give us that lead time so we can deal with things in advance. So we've got our initial balance. We're going to estimate the inflows, take out the outflows, and most of those we know what they are already. Then we're going to put those pieces together. And when we do, we get what should be our ending balance at the end of June. So does the number look positive or is it negative? Okay, so what would that look like? And as I said, you can jot it down on paper. You can do it in Excel, whatever is most comfortable, and it should be easy to use and something that you want to use regularly, not something so cumbersome and hard to figure out that you don't want to look at it once you make it. Okay, it's meant to be a tool that's actually used in the business. And step 5 is really around all day, every day, make it a routine. And while I say that, I don't mean that you're going to spend every single day working on your cash flow forecast, but you have it at your disposal and can start using it. What if you wanted to hire 2 new staff members in the month of July? What would the cash flow allow for that? If you have a shortfall, what might you need to do to get enough cash to make that happen? If you wanted to take on a new client that you knew was notoriously a late payer, would that be worth it and what would the implication be? Or if you're looking kind of collectively at your client base, what happens if we change up the mix? I move from now everybody pays me at the time of service to now some people pay me on a delayed basis. What's going to be the impact? I need a new van for my business. Let's put that expense in there. What does that do? And so once this is set up, within a matter of minutes, you can actually do what if scenarios. And now you're in a place where you're not guessing. You're not hoping and crossing your fingers that it's going to work out, but you're able to see the implication. And so a couple of tips with that I want to talk about. When we're doing the estimation of our inflows, we're not trying to make a sales forecast and our very highest, best estimate ever. We're trying to talk about conservatively how much cash is coming into our business in that month or that week or that day. We're not trying to beat prior months unless we know that with certainty. So we want to be very conservative when we talk about those monies coming in. And all those monies coming in, if you've been able to participate in any of the government supports during the pandemic, those count as monies in as well as any injections that come in from you personally as a shareholder into your business. Now, the opposite is true when we think about the money flowing out. So on inflows, we want to be conservative. On outflows, I want you to be super aggressive. Any possible expense that you could have, I want you to plug it in. I want you to put it in there and see what the impact is. Because we're trying to see what's kind of this worst case scenario. And we're trying to figure out, can this work? How are we going to do that? What's that going to look like? What's going to be the extent of the problem and all of that kind of stuff. Okay. So we've got the pieces together. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts. Now you might be thinking, okay, well, I get it in theory. I see the 5 steps here. I've got that clear, but where am I going to get the information to do this? And that's this last part on page 5. So what information can help us create a cash flow forecast? So if you've been in business for any length of time, you're going to be able to look at your historical bank statements. And so maybe looking at last June is not the best estimate because COVID was in full swing. Maybe you're even going back 2 years to take a look at what was happening. You're going to look at historical financial statements to see what was happening. And you want to make sure that you're looking with a critical eye, because as I said, if we go back just to last June, that may not be representative of what normally June is like because we were kind of in the middle of all of those lockdowns. Credit card statements, if you've got expenses that run through there and you know those regular automated charges are there, pull out those numbers. And then even look at some of your invoices. What's the kind of standard amount that your business is doing? What are the payment terms that people are generally looking at when you see those dates when they pay? And then the other thing you're going to use is your experience, your knowledge, your expectations of what's going on in the business, how many people you know you have in your pipeline or don't. Have you been talking to people? Do you know you've got contract renewals coming up that you're going to be able to secure? How long are those contracts in place? Are you going to be investigating new clients to have? And so, Angela, for you, because you're starting things fresh, you're not going to have that kind of flood of financial information historically, but you're reasonably going to be able to do some digging and find out what are regular expenses. So if you know you need a certain number of softwares to be able to do your work, what are the costs of those? If you're going to have insurance, which I expect you will, to protect yourself in the event of a client being unhappy with some results, you're gonna get that. And so thinking through what are all of those standard things. And so we're not trying to make it super complicated. We want to make it comprehensive, but it doesn't need to be down to the penny. We're ballparking these numbers and we're being approximate. And we're using our experience, we're using what we know is going on in the industry that we're in the economy, and where we expect things to open up. Okay. So I'm going to pause there to see if there are any questions, because I know that you may have some that are specific to your business that maybe I haven't kind of tossed around in a scenario or two. Just to see. And Angela, if you're comfortable, I'm going to bring you off mute just to ask a couple questions about what you envision your clients, where you expect them to come from as you're doing your marketing. Whether you're going to be approaching them individually, or you're going to be working with an organization who might refer them to you.
I will have an ad on Facebook right now and social media mainly.
Okay. And so down the road, you might look for referral partners, you might look for organizations where you can be one of their suppliers. And then what that would do, though, is when you're securing them individually, you're going to get paid at the time of your coaching and your counseling. But then if you're dealing with corporates, it might be that you get paid monthly for all of the ones that are dealing with you during that time. So important to think about maybe what's your immediate plans for your marketing and how you're going to get those clients, and then what might be the longer term implication. Okay. All right. Everybody's doing okay? No? All right. We're going to keep moving. So on to page 6. So I've talked about it a little bit, but what are the benefits to us doing this cash flow forecasting? So number one, we know in advance when cash shortages are going to happen. And that is absolutely one of the biggest benefits. If we can see we're potentially going to have a problem in August, we can brainstorm so many more solutions today. We can involve other people. We can ask for help. We can actually implement new things in our business that can make things change. But if we just get to that day in August and we can't make payroll, or we can't pay our bills, we're going to be limited in terms of the options that we can have. And one of the things I talk about pretty regularly is having access to credit. And so I'll go there in a second, but I do want to spend some time on credit and having it available in your business. So number 2, it enables us to make decisions faster. If we're just hoping that something's going to work out when we make a decision and we're not using any numbers to help us figure that out, we're really taking a leap. Looking at our bank account isn't going to help us. And I know that for most business owners, that's the first place we start. What's in my account and what can I do? Not necessarily thinking about everything else that's going to happen for that month and what is going on. So number 2 is enables us to make faster decisions. And number 3, provides support to obtain credit facilities at a financial institution. And so before we dive into this number 3, I'm a huge proponent of having credit for your business. I think that we want to think about credit as something we can leverage, use it as a tool to help us manage our business. We want to make sure we have an appropriate amount. We don't want to get too much. We don't want to get to this place where we can't make payments on our debt. And so even if you're risk averse, because sometimes I hear that from business owners, I don't want to take any credit on. I think it's prudent and really important in your evolution as a business owner to have access to that credit. And so when I started my business, I left TD, I started my education and consulting coaching practice. First thing I did, once I got incorporated, I went to the bank. I actually shopped all of the major banks in Canada to find a small business provider, and I got a credit card and I got a small overdraft line of credit for my company. Not meaningful amounts of credit. Didn't need them at the time. Certainly wanted a credit card for convenience, but got them so that my credit reputation could start the clock for my business because it was new. And I want it to be able to grow over time as my business grows. And so if I just go to the bank when I need money, that's going to be a bit more challenging. They don't know me. My company hasn't had much credit in place. They're not going to be able to see the track record of what's been going on. But when I start that clock at inception, I'm building up that reputation, just like you have with your personal credit score. We want to start that in our business. And so, new company, no track record. I needed to be responsible personally, and my credit score personally was what allowed me to get that credit. But over time, that will change as the history develops. And so think about that. Are you making use of credit in the business for what you need to do? If you haven't explored that yet, I highly encourage you to think about it, whether or not you go ahead and make those applications, but being ready so that you can have access to it when you need it so it can cover those shortfalls as they happen. And so the larger the company gets, you might actually need a cash flow forecast to show the bankers, to be able to show them we expect the line to go up and down like this. At our highest usage, we expect it to be up here. We expect it to pay out these 3 times during the next 6 months. And so they're not looking for it to be perfect. They're looking for it to be realistic to what actually goes on in your business. And I was talking about it yesterday. I've ripped apart hundreds or thousands of business plans. I've ripped apart thousands of cash flow projections. And it's not because they weren't done properly. They just were not realistic to the particular business. So if you deal with all corporate clients and they pay you in 90 days, showing that you collect cash in the month that you make the sale doesn't line up. Okay. So you want it to actually match what's happening, and in those payment terms, everything needs to kind of go along. Nobody's looking for perfection. They just want to see realistically what's happening. And so that might be needed in that kind of situation. So many more benefits to cash flow forecasting, but certainly that proactive planning, being able to brainstorm, get other people involved helps you, and it helps smooth that out. It allows you, because we were being super aggressive on those outflows, it allows you to say, I'm not going to pay these 3 because I'm short that month. Or these are the 3, if I get there and I'm still short, these are the 3 I'm going to delay. Or I'm going to actually call this client who's been kind of on the fence about dealing with us, and I'm going to get them booked because I'm going to bring in more cash and I'm going to bring in more sales. It allows you to have that more forward-looking planning, which brings a lot more peace and calm to you. So you're not worried about every day, is this going to be okay? Crossing your fingers, hoping that things are going to work and that there's going to be enough cash on the day that you needed it. Okay. And it, not going to lie, it can be a little bit of work to set it up, especially if your business is a little bit bigger, if you got a lot of moving parts. But I absolutely can guarantee that once it's set up, it's something that requires minimal time to keep updated. It provides lots of information. And the biggest thing is it gives you confidence and comfort that you're able to move forward, make decisions quickly, and focus then on what you do best. And I can tell you from my experience and working with so many different entrepreneurs across all different industries, when you're concerned about the financial situation, you can almost see like a weight sitting on somebody's shoulder. Some of you may have felt that before. And I can see as we start working together, that weight kind of lifts off and it's a little bit lighter. Things are feeling a little bit better. Doesn't mean there's not concern anymore, but you've been able to quantify an issue and brainstorm possible solutions, which is the key. It's not about knowing everything and being prepared for every eventuality, but it's about being prepared enough that you know what you would do, or you know who you would get to help you and what are the possible things that you could do. And when we're distracted and we've got that weight on our shoulders, we don't have enough cash coming in, or we're not sure how to manage it, we can't focus on what we're supposed to be doing, which is serving our clients. And clients notice. They notice if you're not 100% focused on them. They know that the work might show up differently. Your attention might show up differently. How about your family and friends? They notice when you're stressed. They notice when you're distracted about something that's on your mind all of the time. For some people, it kind of shows up as not sleeping through the night, not being able to live up to commitments. So if you started your business and you were expecting a certain level of cash flow, and you made commitments to your family about what kind of vacations you're going to go on, maybe what kind of things you were going to have, where you were going to live, all of those kinds of things. If the cash flow doesn't come along to support it, that can create other challenges in your life. And so this business finance stuff really permeates through your whole life. If you're feeling that kind of chronic stress, it's going to show up in your health. So taking care of yourself, getting the support that you need so that you can turn this into something you're excited about. So I've seen it, and it's just so amazing to watch that weight lift. And again, it's not that everything worked out miraculously, it's that the power shifted from this powerless position to where you're actually taking control of it. And now you're brainstorming all of the ways that you're going to be able to solve it. Does that make sense? Anybody resonate with that? Yeah, I'm seeing some nods. So, and I know when people are catching the replay, that's going to feel like that too. Has anybody tried a cash flow forecast before? Yeah. Judy, how about you?
Yes, I have. I just I think it's just the sitting down and doing it, because in our case, because our business is a bit bigger, I always end up getting a bit overwhelmed, and then I abandon it, or I count on somebody else doing it for me, and I've been waiting forever to have it in my hands. So I think it would be a good exercise for me to do it myself, despite the daunting prospect of the task. Yeah.
And so I'm glad that you raised that, because it can feel overwhelming. But like those steps of cash flow clarity, and I'll get Sean just to throw them up again in the chat, just so they're easier to see. We're just doing one step at a time. We're starting with that initial balance. Personally, if it's your first time doing one and actually sitting down in earnest, I would jump ahead to step 3 and put all of those outflows, because those with a lot more certainty. And it's easier information to gather. You can look at your bank statement, or you can do your research about what you're going to do. And then you're going to move on to those inflows and thinking about how much money is going to come in. That's usually the wild card. And looking 6 months out into the future, who knows? If you have recurring contracts or you've got a big project, you're going to know some things, but a lot of it still depends on our business development activities we're doing right now. And in the next couple of months, what's going to generate in 6 months. And so we need to be thinking through that. For some people, it helps to prepare a forecasted income statement. So where you have your sales and your revenues before you get to your cash flow. So sometimes that's a little bit easier place to start. And if you've been in business, you can actually pull up your last year's results, or ones that you consider realistic. You might be going back 2 years if last year was really an anomaly. But then kind of see what would be different. And then, okay, if I hit that sales, what does that translate into cash? And do it that way. There's lots of ways to get there. And the key to not be overwhelmed around it, pick one little part at a time. So when you're putting in your outflows, you're going to go through if you're doing it in Excel, or even if you're writing it down, if you're comfortable with Excel, go there, because then it saves you from writing it down often. And then you're done. It's a one-time effort to get that in there, but stay with the expense that you're on. If you're doing a 6-month cash flow forecast and you're on the line for insurance, put it in for 6 months. Don't come back to every single outflow every time you get to a new month. Finish the thought, go on to the next one. Then you're going to go on to your internet subscription. Then you're going to go on to your cell phone bill and all of those, but finish them. So then you're like, okay, these ones are all done. I've still got these ones remaining. Then I'm going to think through, what are those inflows? So it's all about just small pieces, maybe not doing it all at one time. Maybe you tackle one piece at a time. And sometimes talking it through can help, because we want to keep it simple. If we can't quickly have a conversation about what's going on, we're probably trying to overcomplicate the situation. And so that's always kind of a good rule of thumb to think about. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow as well when we get into pricing, because if we can't quickly compute the numbers, we're overcomplicating the situation. So we want to just keep it simple, think about it from what's going on in our business, and just take one step forward at a time. Kim, I wasn't sure if you look like you wanted to add anything or not. Kimberly? No.
Well, I was just going to say, I agree with the last woman who spoke, how I'm good at the start, but then I get distracted and I don't finish it. And then the other huge my huge problem is I don't do these things regularly enough to even remember my
Mhm.
numbers and then it's just I feel like I can never learn it, but it's really just you know making that a priority and part of your routine that,
Yeah.
yeah.
So a couple things with that. It's so true what you said, like remembering. So we always want to make it in a way that makes sense to us. So I work with lots of clients and they say, well, how should I do it? I'm like, as long as we've got the basics, you report it and show it any way that makes sense to you because you're the one who's going to keep using it.
Mhm,
So it doesn't need to be perfect for me as long as it does the right things. It
mhm,
needs to be with things labeled the way that makes sense to you and then making it a routine
mhm,
and sticking with it. A really great practice that helps you get into that routine is you might have a forecasted column, and then at the end of the month, you come and put the actuals. So you can
mhm,
see how well did I do
mhm,
against my forecast. And if it's different, it doesn't mean you made a mistake. It might be that one customer that you thought was going to start working with you that month got moved to the next month, or maybe an unexpected bill came or it didn't. You didn't have to pay it. So seeing how close you are, then that allows you to go on and adjust the future months.
mhm,
And I've been talking about 6 months, so I really recommend that you have 6 months into the future. And obviously, 6 months out is way more blurry and out of focus than the next couple ahead of us. But if we always have 6 months as we're getting closer to that date, we can refine them. And then
mhm,
it's not a big make work project every month. So we're just quickly looking at it, fine tuning things, and then moving ahead.
mhm.
So, and it's that almost that language of finance. When you're seeing those different terms and making sense of that, how does that kind of add up and how does that line up? So thanks
Mhm,
for sharing, Kimberly.
mhm.
Angela, did you have any thoughts you wanted to share? No? Okay. And so for you, Angela, you're just gonna look at what you know is coming and you're gonna keep playing with it and look at that into the future. Understanding when you start a business, things cost more than you think, and it takes longer to secure the revenues than you usually expect. So having a bit of a runway to be able to fund that is really important. So on page 6, our key takeaway. So if I understood my cash flow cycle, could forecast cash flow and knew my financial position, how would that feel? And so you can make some notes in your workbook. You can share if you want, but it is a personal question. So thinking about how would that feel? What would be different in my business or with me? And so how do we deal with that? What would that be like? Would I feel calmer? Would I feel more in control? Would I be able to do more business development because I wouldn't and do business development in a different way? Client prospects can tell when we're stressed about cash flow when we're trying to close sales because we want cash to come into our business. We don't want them to feel like that. We want them to know that we're focused on them and the work that we could do for them. Thanks, Judy. I would feel more confident in strategically growing my business and growing team. That's always a big one. Like scaling on the sales side, but then the growing team, because once you bring on team members, you have now this fixed expense,
Mhm.
and the stress of that is very high. You're responsible now for someone else's livelihood, and you want to make sure that everything works out well with that. That's a great one. Thank you for sharing that. And I saw Sean posted before. Sorry, I didn't catch that earlier. I think his comment was in regards to a cash flow forecast and how it's a great help because I know that he's been working on that, which is perfect. Okay, so your action items for tonight, if you take the challenge. And so whether it's tonight or whether it's another day, find the information we talked about, grab a piece of paper or start your Excel file and start mapping out your cash flow. And so for simplicity, it might be just starting with the outflows. If that's easier, pull that initial balance, put that together. And so you're starting with that initial balance. And certainly if you're working on it and you have questions, send me a note. I'd be happy to help you to move through that. And it's going to feel awkward. when you make it. It's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel like you're not sure what to put there and what you're doing. And that's all part of the process. I can guarantee you it's going to put you very much more in touch with your numbers. It's going to have you asking questions. You're probably going to dig into some of the bookkeeping. You might be asking bookkeeper questions. You might be questioning, why are we paying some of these expenses? Do we really need to do that? You might be thinking about, wow, I didn't realize that payment patterns were like that. I didn't know that it was going to be like this, or that's not the way I understood it. So it's going to bring up a whole bunch of questions. So keep track of your questions, jot them down so that you can get the answers. It's probably not all the answers tonight, but you'll be able to go back and then find those questions and get the answers to help you create an even better, stronger cash flow forecast. Okay. So that's your action item for tonight. Last night was, what are the first 3 things I need to do so I can better understand the financial position in my business and use my financial results to make decisions. So hopefully you were able to make progress on even one of them to get that started. If not, jotted them down in your workbook so that you're able to keep them in sight, because you're spending already this dedicated time. Like I was saying to Kimberly earlier, getting here is the biggest step. You've decided you're going to take control of the financial part of your business. So don't lose any of the insights. Even if you can't get to them right now, jot them down so that you do not forget, because they're still going to be the same as you continue to move forward. So love to open it up to any questions, comments, anything that people want to raise. I'm happy to answer any questions about specific situations. Everybody's good. And feel free to shoot them in the chat. You can shoot them privately if you want. And don't feel pressure to share, because I know sometimes in the group setting it can be uncomfortable. We're talking about our own businesses and things that we're trying to figure out and to learn. As well, I invite you to book your short call with me. Sean's going to drop that in the chat for you so that we can talk about your specific goals, where historically maybe you've had some challenges getting over a roadblock, and so we can help you make the most of the training. If there's anything specific you're wanting to address, that I can incorporate it as we go through the sessions for the rest of the week. So do book that. That's what those sessions are for. And certainly shoot me an email as well, but would love to get on the phone with you and just talk through it in your specific situation. Okay. So it sounds like we're all set. So you're going to grab a piece of paper or start your Excel. You're going to get going on your cash flow forecast. And while you're doing it, and while it was, while it may not be fun, you may not like to be financial detectives like I do. You might not think it's a nice little puzzle. Keep that feeling of how that peacefulness, that confidence, that comfort, the outcome of the process is what should drive you as you're going forward. That's why you're doing it, so that you can focus on your customers, so that you can be able to do that with ease. Okay. And so tomorrow's a big day. We're going to get into pricing 101. That's a really popular session because we get into not only the math of pricing, but we're also going to get into the emotional side of pricing and what comes up as we ask people to pay us and we tell them our prices, and it gets into all that value. And so I know that's usually one that brings up lots of stuff. And I know from the clients that I work with, as I was saying, they're across all different industries. They are sales up to 2 million. Pricing in 85% of the cases is why they're not making any money and why they're not getting steady paychecks. And so quickly when we dig in, we're able to see which offerings they have that are not profitable, and we're able to make some tweaks. It's not about wholesale changes, but is it maybe we need to target a slightly different customer? Can we cut back expenses by a tiny bit, or is there room to move on the pricing? And not about like 30% price increases, but even a 2, 3, 5% price increase to just capture maybe increasing costs over the years. All that adds to our bottom line. So we're going to get into that tomorrow. I thank you very much for joining us here today. I love that you showed up live. I love that you contributed and you're actively taking control of this part of your business. I know so many more of you are catching this on the replay. So as a reminder, the email comes out around 4:30 Eastern with the recaps for the workbook pages, and it also will have the link to YouTube so you can catch it, the replay there if you want to watch a session over again. So thank you very much. I'm going to stop the recording and I will hang around for a few minutes if anybody wants to ask some questions. But if not, I will see you tomorrow, and have a great day getting started on your cash flow forecast.